Over the past couple of days, you've heard from numerous people on the program as it relates to the ongoing situation in Ukraine. If you recall, I spoke to one member of the Ukrainian Parliament a couple of days ago in Asusin, where she provided some of her insight as to the ongoing situation. And joining me now to provide her insight is Rudik. She is also a member of the Ukrainian Parliament and is the leader of the Golos party in Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining me amidst what is obviously a very challenging time for your country. And so obviously, again, thank you very much for joining me. I want to start out though with a lot of people are kind of watching what's going on from the sidelines. They're watching from, let's say a country like Canada, for example, where they are fortunate enough to be able to, watch from the sidelines and not have to go through a situation like what's going on in Ukraine on their own. So can you speak a little bit about what the situation is like on the ground and whether or not you personally have, any weapons on you to defend yourself?
Hello, Wyatt. Thank you so much for having me. So as of today, we have been at war with Russia for 8 days. So far, we have not been given up any major city of Ukraine, and we have been giving them a very, very good fight. Russia has the third strongest army in the world right now. And so I'm happy and I'm super proud of my country and my nation, how Ukrainians are kicking ass and showing Putin a really, really, really good fight. I'm right now in Kyiv, Ukraine, in our capital. And there has been a lot going on for the last couple of hours. So the capital is being constantly bombarded by Russian missiles and by different Air Force strikes. So there are two main areas where the fights are going, the air and the land. On the air, we, as Ukraine, we are pretty weak, and Russia covers the whole sky. And it's being very challenging to oppose it and fight it. That's why they're able to attack our cities. And you have seen probably the pictures of cities being destroyed, especially Kharkiv, especially Kherson, and they are attacking Kyiv. On second is on the land. On the land, we are doing very good. But unfortunately, we need the protection from the sky. And this is what we are asking our NATO allies. That's why we are asking the United States to help us to fight Russians in the air. From the land standpoint, we know that Russia outnumbers us in terms of manpower. However, the goal is to, for every single person, give them a really good fight. That's why I bore arms myself. That's why I took a gun. I have it with me. It's Kalashnikov. And that's why I formed a resistance crew here in Kyiv, who is helping our army and helping patrol the city, helping prepare for the fights, etc. So how the fight usually goes, especially for Kyiv. So first, they are starting with the Air Force attacks. And then right after that, the Russian troops, small one by one, are trying to get into the city. This is where the resistance crews come handy because they can attack and neutralize everything that is suspicious. Russians trying to instill fear here, and we are obviously fighting back for this not to happen. For the last 8 days, there has been a massive airstrikes here in Kyiv, and yesterday was just one that was just right here near where I'm located, and it was pretty unpleasant. That's why I am doing whatever I can do. So I'm training, I am preparing for the siege that is coming up, etc. But I cannot do as a person, as a political leader, I cannot do anything with the missiles that are going from the air. That's why here we do need support. Kyiv is preparing for a siege. You probably have heard that there is a massive amount of Russian forces coming to Kyiv. That's why my resistance crew and myself, we are preparing. We're preparing forces. We're preparing food, water supplies, everything, and we are getting ready that they will take a control of the entrance and exits from the city. Ukrainian nation has been impressively brave. and we will be fighting and spilling our blood for our land. But we do need support from other countries right now so that we can actually win this war instead of just wondering if we would win.
I want to go too as to what your daily life is looking like right now. I mean, right now, like for example, you're doing this interview with me right now. How do you differentiate when it's safe to do things like interviews and just stay in your house versus when it's not safe and there's a threat?
Well, there is a constant threat, and especially that I'm a politician and like I'm very pro-Ukrainian politician, very used to be very oppositional politician. So our intelligence gave us a so-called Putin's kill list, and I'm obviously on it, which is, there is not a good answer to that, like not a good answer to what to do when you get on Putin's kill list. So I got this funny answer, which I'm using. So I'm sharing it with you. I'm saying, yeah, I'm on a Putin's kill list, but I'm also on Ukraine's top 10 bachelorettes list. So that hopefully evens it out. And it's generally when you hear the siren, you have to go downstairs. But after 8 days of war, we already figured out how to differentiate between if it's during the day and before 10 p.m. It's basically, usually it's nothing. After 10 p.m., they start massive attacks, and then you have really to go to the shelter. We don't go outside at night at all. We are not trying to, we're trying to protect each other and the ones who we love. And there is always somebody who is awake and not sleeping. And this is a weird thing because now during the war, it seems that your sleep is so sound that you cannot even you cannot hear, you are not waking up because of the rockets. And this is the scary thing because you can die while you're sleeping. And that's why somebody has to be always alarmed. And my daily life has changed. Like I'm a Pilates girl, so I had to go to, like, my last peaceful thing was to go to Pilates on Thursday, but instead I had to go to Parliament and vote for the martial law for my country. And an hour after that, I got my rifle. I have it right here. I can show it to you. So this is how it looks like. You see, it's heavy. It smells like oil and metal and a little bit of blood. And it's used, it's not new. So people were killed of it. And I got it so I can protect myself, because the war between Russia and Ukraine, it has been going on for 8 years, when they took Crimea and they took our eastern parts. And we know definitely what the Russian soldiers are capable of. And obviously nobody wants that. And obviously myself as a woman, I really dread it. So on the one hand, I have to stay here and protect my home, my country, my city. On the other hand, I have to deal with things like this, training to shoot, training to fire guns, and work on the legislation, give the interviews, etc. By the way, you see on my back, there are the windows. You see there is a tape over them. You know why is that?
I don't know.
Well, so if the rocket hits, so that, or hits nearby, so that there will be no glass pieces. It's people sometimes get hurt because there's just like a pieces of the glass shots all over the place. So I learned a lot of the things that I never learned before, like how to go down on your belly if there is a Air Force strike nearby, and you have to open your mouth and close your ears, and how to, like, there are certain colors you cannot be wearing, obviously, and that I cannot be driving anymore because it's the most dangerous piece, and there's lots of stuff.
And in terms of, obviously you're a member of parliament, so you basically, have to stay in Ukraine because that's where your constituents are. Many actually citizens know of Ukraine have decided to flee the country to go to Poland has been a place where some people have decided to go to. And I want to go back to something you mentioned as to it's dangerous to be out on the streets driving right now. A lot of the people who are trying to flee to Poland have been in this lineup to cross from Ukraine to Poland, and they've been in that lineup in some cases for a couple of days based off of what I understand. So speak a little bit more about kind of the logistics as to why you decided to stay in Ukraine versus leaving.
Well, first of all, you're right. I'm Ukrainian Member of Parliament, and my duty is to be here, same as doctor's duty is to be at their place. So there is like no way I'm fleeing. And second is I'm still very angry because of I still don't agree with that thing that Putin can move me away from where I want to be. I'm pretty stubborn, and this is why I'm saying no. We are not going anywhere. And I'm happy that my team is saying the same way. And I still think that we can give him a good fight. So this is the first thing. Second is regarding the refugees. There are definitely many people who are super afraid. It's a shock for everybody. And the first couple of days were very complicated to cross the border. Right now, it's much faster. And people are able to cross, and I'm glad and I'm super thankful to all our neighbors from the West who are taking in refugees. This is really important. And we, as parliamentarians, did everything so that will be faster. We had like cross-country agreements. They would do it as a part of humanitarian mission. Well, it's unsafe driving around, right? That's true. As I said, because right now we are dealing with the situation with the Russian troops that are trying to take exits and entrances to the cities, basically highways, right? So that's why there is a curfew, and you are not supposed to be out. And honestly, everybody's so tense right now, especially the protectors, that they could, like, I don't know, they could shoot you in mistake, and then what are you going to do? So we are not risking that, except for the times when it's troops, when the troops are patrolling the city.
And just as one final question before you go, and thank you again for joining me and for taking the time, but just one final question before we conclude. I spoke to a Ukrainian member of parliament, as I mentioned, and we kind of talked a little bit about the idea of Belarus. I saw a news headline that Belarus was joining in with the fight with Russia to try to invade Ukraine. Belarus was among the countries who voted against condemning Russia's actions at the United Nations yesterday. Is it true that Belarus is potentially joining in with Russia to try to invade the sovereign state of Ukraine?
Well, Belarus was always a satellite of Russia, and right now they will be acting on behalf of Russia, and we can only use their actions to, get the feeling of what Russia plan is. So far, they haven't been actively involved, and I think this is something that Putin will have in his pocket to try and to push back some sanctions that are going to be imposed, or at least have it as a threat. Because right now, you see, he didn't have any major wins. He is raising the stakes with all the humanitarian catastrophes that he is creating, but there is not much else that he can do. Like, what else? He's threatening everybody with a nuclear crisis. And okay, and what else? That's it. And that's why we anticipate that he will be keeping the Belarus as one of his cards in his sleeve. And only afterwards, he will be able to announce that Belarus is joining. We don't have any illusions about that. We understand that there is a puppet government with Lukashenko. However, it's not like actively in the war with us right now.
Okay, that is Kira Rudik. She's a Ukrainian MP and leader of the Golos party in Ukraine. Thanks so much again for making the time to speak with me. Obviously, we're all thinking about people in Ukraine, and hopefully we will chat again soon. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good evening. It was a pleasure talking to you.
You too.